In this part of the video, I'm going to talk about response styles. As a survey researcher, it's not enough to ask clear, understandable survey questions. If you ask clear, understandable survey questions, you're definitely more likely to get accurate information from your participants compared to if you had asked confusing questions, and it's definitely a good idea to ask clear, understandable questions, but if you do that, you're still not guaranteed to get accurate information. And that's because people have what are called response styles. A response style is a tendency to respond to survey questions in a certain way, regardless of what's being asked. It's basically a habit that a survey taker has developed over time. And response styles are a problem because a response style is something a person can fall back on whenever the person is unclear what they're being asked on a survey, or whenever they don't care about what they're being asked on a survey. A response style gives a person a default choice that they can fall back on just to get the question over with. So response styles encourage mindless responding, which is a problem because mindless responding will affect the results of a survey study. So a survey researcher will definitely want to detect and discourage mindless responding as much as possible. Right now I want to go over a few specific types of response styles: yay saying, nay saying, and following a position preference. Yay saying is the tendency to agree with survey questions, regardless of what they're asking. A yay-sayer would rather agree with a survey question than disagree. So if a yay-sayer is asked a survey question and the person is unclear what they're being asked, or they don't care about the question and they don't want to think about it, the person is likely to agree just to get the question over with. The opposite of yay-saying is nay-saying. Nay-saying is a tendency to disagree with survey questions, regardless of what they're asking. A naysayer is a person who would rather disagree than agree. So if a naysayer is asked a question and the person is unsure what they're being asked, or they don't care about the question, the person is likely to disagree just to get the question over with. You might have been in a situation before where you've seen a person choose strongly disagree to every question on a survey, going one all the way down. That person is probably a naysayer. That person is probably strongly disagreeing mindlessly to every question. And you might have seen a person answer strongly agree to every question, going five all the way down. That person is probably a yay-sayer. That person is probably just mindlessly agreeing to every question. Now, it's possible for a person to actually strongly disagree to every question or to strongly agree to every question, but in most cases, that person would either be a naysayer or a yay-sayer and mindlessly responding. People also have what are called position preferences. A position preference is a preferred option on a Likert scale, like a 1 to 5 scale, or a preferred option on a multiple choice question. So if a person always chooses 2 on a 1 to 5 scale when they're unsure of how to answer, that's a position preference. If a person always chooses C on a multiple choice question when they're unsure of what answer to give, that's a position preference. As a student, you might have a position preference for answering a multiple choice exam question. You might always choose B when you're unsure of what answer to give, or you might always choose D. Professors can also have position preferences when they design multiple choice exams. A professor might like to make the correct choice B, or a professor might like to make the correct choice D. Actually, you might have been in a situation before when you're taking a multiple choice exam and you've noticed that one letter has appeared lots of different times throughout the exam. For example, you might have noticed that 10 of the questions have all been B. And if that's happened to you, you probably felt a little bit nervous because you might have been wondering, is there something wrong with the exam, or is there something wrong with me? Am I missing out on something? But it might just be that your professor had a position preference and just wanted to make 10 questions all B in a row. So that's a position preference. Now I want to talk about what a researcher can do to detect response styles. I want to talk about what a survey researcher can do to detect mindless responding. One strategy is by including filler and reversed scored questions on a survey. If you're a survey researcher, you can include these types of questions on a survey as a way of setting up a trap to catch people who are just mindlessly responding by following response styles. So first I want to define filler and reverse scored questions and give at least one example of each, and then I'll explain how these two types of questions can be used to catch mindless responding with response styles. So a filler question is a question that's not related to the purpose of the survey. It's a question that's not related to the topic of the survey. And I'll share one example. If I'm giving out a survey on satisfaction with the university, and on that survey, I ask a question that says, what type of phone do you use? That would be a filler question. That question isn't related to the topic of satisfaction with the university. So that question would be a filler question. It would stick out like a sore thumb on that survey. A reverse scored question is a certain type of Likert scale question. So first I need to quickly explain what a Likert scale question is. A Likert scale question is a statement that's followed by a scale that usually goes from 1 to 5. 1 is strongly disagree, 5 is strongly agree. When a person answers a Likert scale question, the person reads the statement and then chooses their level of agreement with the statement on the scale that's provided. So if a person disagrees highly, they choose a 1. If they agree highly, they choose a 5. A reverse scored question is a Likert scale question in which the highest option is the lowest level of what's being measured. I think this definition will make more sense if I give an example. So imagine a questionnaire that measures a person's extroversion. Imagine a personality test that measures how outgoing a person is. That questionnaire would have a series of statements that all have to do with extroversion. One question might say, I would rather be with a group of people than be alone. Another question might say, I prefer going out and being in a crowd than staying at home on the weekend. Another question might say, I would rather go to a party than read a book. And as a person completes the survey, they would choose their level of agreement with each extroversion statement all the way down. And at the end, the person would get a total score that would be the person's level of extroversion. And if this questionnaire included a question like, I would rather stay home and be alone than be with a group of friends, that question would be reversed. On an extroversion questionnaire, that would be a reversed question because on that question, 5 is actually the most introverted choice. If a person chooses 5, they're probably an introvert. So the highest option, which is a 5, is actually the lowest level of what's being measured, which is extroversion. So like I said, if 1 is the most introverted, let me say that again. If 1 is the most extroverted choice, and 5 is the least extroverted choice, and the scale goes from high extroversion at a 1 up to low extroversion at a 5, it's a reversed question. And if you include a reversed question on a survey, it can actually be a way of catching mindless responding, like yay saying or nay saying, because imagine a person completes a extroversion questionnaire and they answer 5 all the way down. They answer strongly agree to every item all the way down, and they even answer a 5 to a reversed question, like I would rather read a book than be with a group of people. Well, that raises a red flag, right? It's suspicious, because if a person is strongly agreeing to all of these statements like, I would rather be with people than be alone, I like being in a crowd, I like to socialize, and the person also strongly agreed with a filler item saying, I like to spend my time alone, that's not consistent, that doesn't match up. So that filler item is a trap that that person has fallen into, and now the researcher is aware that that person has probably responded mindlessly. So as a survey researcher, you also have to be aware that people differ in their desire to make a good impression. People have what's called a level of social desirability. Social desirability is a personality trait, and it's a person's desire to make a good impression while completing a survey. People who are low in social desirability don't care about making a good impression. They'll choose the answer that they actually agree with, even if it might make a bad impression. And a person who's high in social desirability does care about making a good impression, and they're likely to avoid answers that might make them look bad. A person who's high in social desirability is more likely to lie on a survey question if that's what it takes to make a good impression. And as a researcher, you have to be aware that people have social desirability concerns, because even if a survey is anonymous, a person who's high in social desirability might still be concerned about making a good impression. Even if they're not putting their name on the survey, they might still somehow have a gut feeling that their answers are going to make an impression, that they're going to be giving off some type of impression of themselves. So there are ways to deal with this issue of social desirability, and one way to deal with this issue of, well, actually, I'm going to cover two possible ways of dealing with this issue. One way is by just using more neutral wording in your survey questions. If you use neutral wording, a person who's high in social desirability is less likely to feel nervous about making a negative impression. A person who's high in social desirability will be less likely to feel pressured to choose one option over another to make a good impression. Also, you can also include something called the social desirability scale, which actually measures a participant's level of social desirability. You can actually measure how high your participants are in social desirability by attaching the social desirability scale to your questionnaire. And if you do this, each participant will have their own social desirability score. And you can, it turns out that there's actually a way to adjust your data to account for social desirability. You can actually do a statistical correction to your survey answers to try to eliminate the influence of social desirability. And we're not going to be getting into the details of that in this class, because it takes some advanced statistics, but that is an option to a survey researcher. Before the end of this video, I wanted to share a few examples of questions that are on this social desirability scale. Each question on this scale is just a statement that a person who's high in social desirability would agree with. I think that the first question says, when I'm voting, I always thoroughly investigate all of the candidates. If a person is high in social desirability, they're likely to agree, because that is the way that they would make a good impression. I think, well, another question might say something like, I always help people who are in need. A person who's high in social desirability will want to say yes, because that's what will make a better impression to most people. So if a person agrees to every item on this scale, or the majority of the items, that's what's going to give the person a high score on social desirability. So that's the end of this video, and in the next video, we'll begin the second half of the topic of survey research and talk about how to get a good representative sample so that you reach an unbiased conclusion about the population that you're studying.